Have you ever noticed that you can be in a room full of people, laughing at the right moments, nodding along, and still feel like you're the only person actually there? No one else seems to notice. You look fine, you sound fine, but deep down, there's a distance, a static, a sense that no one in that room actually knows you. And what's strange is that this feeling doesn't disappear when you add more people. It doesn't dissolve at parties, in group chats, in relationships. Sometimes it gets worse. Perhaps you are living exactly this right now. You've got people around you, people who call you, people who sit next to you, and still, at night, there's a hollow place nothing seems to reach. What no one tells you, and what philosophy has understood for centuries, is that this kind of loneliness has almost nothing to do with how many people surround you. It's not a social problem, it's a structural one. And Schopenhauer was blunt about this. He said that a person can only be themselves as long as they are alone, and that whoever does not love solitude does not love freedom. That single idea already tells you something uncomfortable. The ache you feel isn't a malfunction, it's information. It's telling you that you've been performing a version of connection that was never real to begin with. This video is not made to comfort you with easy phrases about finding your tribe. It's made for you who has felt profoundly alone in a marriage, in a friend group, in a family dinner, and has quietly wondered if something is wrong with you for feeling that way. Nothing is wrong with you. What's wrong is the model of connection you were handed. So if you're ready to look at this honestly, a path that will unsettle you before it frees you, stay. Because after this, you will never mistake company for connection again. Loneliness surrounded by people is not a contradiction. It is the most common human condition, and almost no one names it correctly. Most people call it depression, call it a bad phase, call it needing more friends. But the philosophers who studied the self most closely called it something else: alienation. Not alienation from the world, but from yourself, performed so consistently around others that you forget it's happening. Kierkegaard wrote that the most common form of despair is not wanting to be who you actually are. And that despair doesn't need an empty room to exist in. It thrives especially well in a crowded one. Think about it. You adjust your voice for one friend, your opinions for another, your silences for your family. Each adjustment is small, almost invisible, a kind of translation you do without noticing, but translation always loses something. And what gets lost, piece by piece, conversation by conversation, is the version of you that never gets spoken. That's the one who ends up alone, not because no one is around, but because no one has met her. This is not a flaw in your personality. It's what happens to almost everyone raised to be agreeable, easy, likable. You learned early that being fully yourself came with a cost, so you built a self that could travel safely through rooms. And it worked. People like that version. They just don't know the other one exists. The loneliness you feel is not the absence of people. It's the presence of a performance you can't stop giving, even when you're exhausted by it. And the most disorienting part is that the performance can be so smooth, so convincing, that you start to lose track of where it ends and you begin. But there is something even more unsettling underneath this. Something almost no one wants to look at directly. Because if the crowd cannot see you, if even your closest people only know the edited version, then who exactly is confirming that you exist? And that is precisely where we go next, into the moment when you realize that no external witness was ever going to solve this, and the terrifying freedom that comes with that realization. There is a moment, usually quiet, usually late at night, when you understand something that cannot be unlearned. No one is coming to fully see you, not because they don't care, but because seeing you was never their job, and it was a mistake to have outsourced it to them. This is the death of a very specific illusion, the illusion that the right people, if you just found them, would finally make the loneliness stop. That illusion is comforting the way a story is comforting. It gives you a plot. Find the right partner, the right friend group, the right community, and the ache resolves. But Camus already dismantled this. He wrote that man stands face to face with the irrational, and he feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. And the absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. Translate that outside philosophy class, and it means this: you will keep reaching for people to fill a silence that people were never built to fill. And every time someone fails to do it, and they always eventually will, you interpret it as their failure or your unworthiness, when actually it was never a job any person could complete. This is frightening because it removes the excuse. It was easy to believe that loneliness was just bad luck, the wrong friends, the wrong timing, the wrong partner. It is far harder to sit with the idea that the ache is structural, that it belongs to being a conscious person who can never fully transmit their inner world to another conscious person, no matter how much they love each other. Most people collapse when they get near this idea. They panic and reach for more noise, more company, more validation, precisely to avoid feeling the thing that is actually true. But those who can sit with it without running, they begin to build something almost no one else has. A relationship with themselves that doesn't depend on being witnessed to feel real. Because here is the reversal that changes everything. If no one else was ever going to complete this for you, then the presence you've been begging others for was always available from a different direction, from you. Not as a consolation prize, as the actual answer. The very fact that no one can fully reach you means no one can fully define you either. That silence you've been afraid of, the one that shows up when the room empties and no one's laughter is filling the space anymore, is not a void. It's the first honest room you've been in all day. And it is in that room, uncomfortable and quiet, that a different kind of belonging starts to take shape. Not the kind that depends on being chosen by others, but the kind that depends on no longer abandoning yourself to be chosen. This shift has a name, and it is exactly what we will look at next. Jung called it individuation. The long, unglamorous process of separating who you actually are from every role you learn to play to be accepted. It is not the same as isolation. Isolation is what happens to you. Individuation is what you choose, and this is precisely the point most people misunderstand about loneliness that persists around others. They assume the fix is to be seen more, to explain themselves better, to find people who finally get it. But Jung suggested almost the opposite. The ache lifts not when you're finally understood by everyone, but when you stop needing to be. This is not resignation. It's not giving up on connection. It's recognizing that the specific loneliness you feel in a crowded room comes from measuring your realness by how well the room receives you. The moment you stop taking that measurement, something strange happens. The room doesn't feel less crowded, but you feel less absent from it. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Read quickly, that sounds like a poster. Read slowly, it's a diagnosis of exactly what's missing. You cannot become who you are while constantly checking whether who you are is acceptable to the 12 people currently in the room. And this is where the loneliness that never goes away starts to make sense. It was never about the room. It was about a self that had gone missing, and no number of people could locate what only you had put down. The people who eventually stop feeling this bone-deep aloneness are not the ones who found the perfect social circle. They are the ones who quietly stopped performing translation for approval and started living as the version of themselves that doesn't need to travel safely through rooms. That version is slower to warm up. It doesn't perform ease. It sometimes sits in silence at dinner instead of filling it. And here is the part almost no one warns you about. Some people will find that unsettling. They preferred the translated version. They will call it distance, coldness, changing. But what actually happened is that you stopped being alone in your own company for the first time, and that recalibration is visible, even if no one names it correctly. This is not a small adjustment. It is, in its own quiet way, the same kind of confrontation that happens when someone stops looking outward for a meaning that was never going to arrive from outside. And once you've felt that shift, once you know what it is to be present with yourself without needing anyone in the room to confirm you're real, the old kind of loneliness starts losing its grip. Not because people finally see you, but because you finally do. There is a specific kind of person who no longer feels lonely in a crowd, and it has nothing to do with charisma or popularity. It has to do with having stopped waiting to be understood before relaxing, waiting to be chosen before feeling secure, waiting for someone else to confirm that the version of them sitting quietly at the edge of the room is acceptable. This person still goes to the dinners, still shows up in the group chat, but something underneath has changed, and it changes everything about how the room feels. They are no longer performing translation. They are simply present. And if the room doesn't fully meet them, it no longer registers as abandonment. It registers as information, nothing more. This is the cost, and it is real. You will feel for a while more alone than you did when you were performing well. That is not a sign you did it wrong. It's the gap between the old strategy, dissolve into the room to avoid the ache, and the new one, stay yourself and let the ache pass through instead of around you. Rilke understood this when he wrote that people have, with the help of conventions, resolved everything the easy way. But he believed that we are solitary, and it is better to recognize that we are, and even to start out from that realization. Starting from that realization does not mean giving up on people. It means no longer asking them to do the one thing they were never going to be able to do. Dissolve a solitude that is simply part of being a person who thinks and feels from the inside of one body in one life that no one else will ever fully occupy. Once you stop asking people to do the impossible, the relationships you do have get lighter, stranger, more honest. You stop needing them to save you from yourself. You start actually enjoying them because they're no longer under that pressure either. And this is the reversal that changes how the rest of your life will feel in rooms. The ache you've been running from was never proof that something was missing from your life. It was proof that a self was waiting for you to stop outsourcing its existence to whoever happened to be sitting nearby. That self does not need a bigger friend group. It needs you to stay. So if tonight you find yourself in a room, surrounded and still feeling that quiet static underneath the conversation, don't reach immediately for another person to fix it. Sit with it for one moment longer than usual, not to suffer it, to notice who's actually there. Feeling it, that's the one who's been waiting. Write in the comments the moment you first realized you could be lonely even with people who loved you. Naming it is part of no longer running from it. And if this reached something in you, the next part of this continues exactly where this leaves off. You are not broken for feeling this in a crowd. You are, for the first time, actually in the room.